since I'm done with that. Oh, right. So on the topic of mistakes, I ended up making one today, and ironically, I did not follow my advice on FOMO that I gave not too long ago. I swear I was holding R2 there. So in recent news, there was a Nintendo Direct that had announced Metroid Prime 4. And I, being a somewhat recent fan of Metroid, have gotten hit with the Metroid fever, for lack of a better term. I wanted to play a bunch of Metroid games, and well, the thing is that it's actually very difficult to play a lot of Metroid games due to the fact that they are early 2000 games that Nintendo isn't exactly trying to push out anymore. So with that being said, right after the direct, the ETA on the time I couldn't tell you, but Metroid Zero Mission was added to Nintendo Switch Online, and so with that, I then began seeing a lot of people playing Metroid Zero Mission, of course, and in that I was thinking to myself, man, I really wish I could play Zero Mission. It's the best way to play Metroid 1. Technically, I could play Zero Mission anytime I wanted to if I emulated the game, but to make a long story short with my history of emulation, I don't like the fact that if something goes wrong, I have no idea how to fix it. And either I stick with it or I try and fix it and then it makes something worse and I have no idea how to go back to the original version unless I just delete everything and restart from scratch. So in that case, I don't want to mess with it. I'd rather just buy it officially and I don't have to think about how to put this thing together. Not only that, I got some personal hangups with taking stuff that isn't offered to. Apologize for that. Taking stuff that isn't offered for free. So, but that's a me thing, right? Anyways, in that case, I was playing Zero Mission. No, I'm not playing Zero Mission. I wanted to play Zero Mission, and then along came Nintendo announcing that they had another free trial for Nintendo Switch Online. Now, here's an important point to note. I grew up with the Game Boy Advance. However, I personally called it the Game Boy. So when I read the Nintendo Switch Online's thing and saw that you could play with the Game Boy, in my head, I saw the purple device that I had as a child and not the square one that came before it. So I was beaten by reading, to make a long story short. And, I had a mistake. I made a mistake. And, I didn't take it too bad. I was definitely disappointed in not playing Zero Mission. But, I thought to myself, well, at the very least, I can play Super Metroid and, have a good time with it. Because, hey, that's another game in Metroid's lineup that isn't available due to the fact that that game has come out at, I don't even know the time frame in which it came out. But nevertheless, it was something to do basically, and so that my day wasn't a waste. However, I was definitely not feeling feeling great about it. But in playing Super Metroid, excuse me, I kind of started thinking about the other Metroid games I did have, and I started to think, well, I may not be able to play Zero Mission, but I can at least have fun with the games that I have, and in some regard, play them again to see if they change with not my knowledge of those games now. And, somehow or another, I just managed to become grateful for what I had in this scenario. Excuse me. And I reminded myself of, that which I had. And in some cases, that which I have, other people don't have, which adds to how grateful I am to have what I have. And instead of focusing on what I didn't have, it helped me focus on what I did have and appreciate it all the more. That was a very roundabout way of saying my sentence, but I hope that it came across clearly. But with that being said about the Nintendo Switch Online, it does make me like lament the fact that we're not in the Wii U 3DS days anymore, because I didn't know how good I had it back then. And if I knew I was going to be as into Metroid now as I was back then, I would have brought, Zero Mission, Super Metroid, back when the Wii U system was still up and running. But at this point, it's an is what it is situation. You can't really, you can't really curse. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but the gist of it is that I gotta move on and be grateful for what I have and what I have got, because even though I don't have those games, I do have Metroid Fusion that I bought on the Wii U, which, that's something. That's a game that I don't have to track down and get, despite the fact that, what's the word I'm looking for? Despite the fact that I wasn't big on Metroid back then. I was big on listening to people who were in Metroid, because for whatever reason, I just thought that it was a much more entertaining game to hear about than play, and now I think it's the opposite, but whatever, it happens. That being said, aside from not being as big a fan of the subscription model of gaming, one thing I really don't like about the NSO, Nintendo Switch Online, is the fact that I have to play with the board. It's custom borders. I can't turn it off in a way, and I don't know why that is, but I'll grit my teeth and bear it, because I can play Super Metroid in 2024 on an HD TV, and that's not something that I think most people thought they could say. Especially with those old carts that are, the battery is dying, and now people are just losing access to Super Metroid in general. So once again, it's something that I'm grateful for, that I have access to and that I can play. Now, with the topic of Super Metroid, something that really hit me when I was playing it is that this is a kind of game that really cements the fact that people should really go out of their way to play the games that they have again. Not only because, hey, you own it and it's a good way to get more enjoyment out of a game that way, but it's because the game has actually transformed the more and more I have played it. And what I mean by this is, when I first played Super Metroid for the first time, I had no context of any other Metroid games. Actually, I did. That is wrong. I had a context of Metroid Fusion, because that was the first Metroid game I had played out of recommendation from a much bigger YouTube channel, that if you're going to get into Metroid, play that one first and see if you like it. But I wouldn't get around to playing Super Metroid until the NSO, and I think the last time I played it was 2021 maybe. Anyways, when I played it, I had no context of the prior games that came before it. So in one case, I did not understand the leap in hardware and how impressive the game was. And in another sense, I did not have context for Metroid's story, or why the last baby Metroid is in captivity is such a big deal. Again, because I didn't have the context for it. But on my other YouTube channel, I did a whole Metroid thing, and I emulated the games. And one of the games I emulated was Metroid Zero Mission, along with Samus Returns, but primarily Zero Mission was the game I emulated. And in that, I had gained the context that I missed, and I gained a better appreciation for it. Now, that was my second playthrough. My first playthrough, I didn't like the game as much as other people did, because I couldn't help but compare it to Symphony of the Night. Another Metroidvania, which had, whatchamacallit, knocked my socks off when I was younger, and, I just thought it was a cool game. But, so that was my first playthrough. My second playthrough, I gained an appreciation for it. This time, I had carried the skills of my second playthrough into this one, because I never got far enough in Super Metroid to actually learn how to wall jump. And so, no, actually, that's not true. My second playthrough, I did, but in this playthrough, What I'm trying to say, sorry, because my thoughts are a little scrambled here, is that I ultimately, no matter the playthrough, whether it be first or second, I did not realize the power of wall jumping, nor did I implement it in any way outside of any mandatory section. However, in this playthrough, I was fully aware of the fact that I could wall jump, and whatchamacallit, fully aware of the fact that I can wall jump, and I was fully aware of how busted Super Metroid is as, a video game. What I mean by busted is that the game is purely open as to how you can, approach it. And like, it's hard for me to describe with just words alone. You'd really have to play it or like see a speed run of it to get the idea of how just open Super Metroid is. And because of that, I ended up trying it out for myself and seeing, okay, well, since I know, man, Neji, spam and rotation. Since I know that, the game isn't as, how do you say, for lack of a better term, tight-lipped with how I approach certain things. Like, it's not going to gate me from getting anything in particular. I can really go anywhere I want, and so long as I have either an ability that lets me get there or the capability / skill to maintain myself while I'm there, the sky's the limit to this game. I can go wherever I want and get whatever upgrade I want before it's time. So with that being said, I used it for a lot of sequence breaking now, and you know what? The game is different. That's how I can say. All that rambling to say is that Super Metroid is now different to me. It is no longer a game that I now like because I get the context for it. It's now a game that has transformed right before my eyes, and I think it is actually one of the best games I've ever played. Like, that's how significant this playthrough has been, because I have just been skipping intended routes and getting upgrade after upgrade. And like, the level of freedom you have in this game, even from a casual perspective, is humongous. And I can only imagine the potential like this game has in terms of like speed running and the amount of routes you can take. Now, part of me wants to say that, the devs probably didn't know what they were doing, but then again, they made Metroid Zero Mission, and it's a game that's very open in a similar manner to Super Metroid, and so it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, no, they had to have known, right? Like, there's no way you made a game similar to this that is just as open in how you can approach it, and it's a mistake, right? Like, it can't be in my mind. But all that to say is that, if, like, for instance, Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, not exactly a game that you can, from my perspective, from what I understand, implement a lot of the skill that you have in your first playthrough into your second, or the skill you learn in your first playthrough into your second, mostly due to the fact that really this game is as simple as it comes because it's designed to be that way. So unless you're talking specifically about character choices, yeah, there's not much you can bring into this playthrough. However, it's something that you can at least appreciate more and more how the game is designed. The further, you look into it, and how do you say, yeah, just play it, and the more that you play it. Yeah, I believe that's all I got to say on that matter. So, to make a long story short, enjoy your games and replay them a lot. That's the moral of this story.